to our fourth session, and last week we talked a little bit about the plate method and kind of some, I guess some tips and tricks to get you focused on what types of foods to be focusing on, maybe what types of foods to be limiting. What did you guys think about that session? Did you have any feedback? Do you have any further questions? How did that work into this past week's food plan? If you want to comment about anything, feel free in the questions box just to kind of start our conversation as we wait for a few more people to filter in. Let me know if you have any feedback. You can type your feedback questions into the question box if you'd like. If you don't, that's fine as well, but I just thought if there was anything out there that anybody wanted to talk about, we can. All right, looks like we have a quiet group tonight, and that's okay. All right, so let's move on. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about nutrition labels. And although probably not the most exciting topic, I think it's really important. And the biggest thing I like to say about nutrition labels is that there's a lot of information, and what I would suggest is just like anything that you're maybe new to or not that familiar with, you got to start somewhere. You got to practice. Practicing reading labels is really the best place to kind of start. So I'll kind of break it down section by section, and to maybe just start looking at your nutrition labels if you haven't before, just to see what's on them. And then if you do have specific health goals or specific nutrition goals, you can start to zero in on those areas. And, a lot of the information is nice and it's helpful, but you don't have to look at every single piece of a nutrition label every time you buy a food. You'll kind of get good at it and kind of know what you're looking for to know if the food is what you're looking for. So I'll kind of go over a little bit of the history. Once again, exciting, I know, but it's kind of good to know where these came from. I don't know if you guys remember a time when we've had food without nutrition labels, and I actually do, and just very briefly, remember the time when kind of the nutrition labels were becoming a thing, and we as a society started gaining more information about our foods, and we're kind of tuning into our health a little bit more. And so back in 1990 is when the Nutrition Labeling and Education Act provided by the FDA came into play. And basically it's the authority to require nutrition labeling of most foods to be regulated. And basically it requires that all nutrient content claims, such as high fiber or low fat, be consistent with agency regulations. And I just want to, kind of note that everything on the nutrition label is regulated by the FDA, but I do want to note that not everything on the front of a box or front of a package is regulated. So kind of pay attention to that. Obviously, a food can claim a lot on the front of the box that may be stretching the truth or not the whole truth or not really, anything that would be really that beneficial. Just, take note of that and kind of really get all of your information from the nutrition label because it is consistent. So the nutrition label is a panel that is found on the package. It contains a variety of information about the nutritional value of the food. There are many pieces of information which are standard on most food labels, such as the serving size, the number of calories, grams of fat, nutrients, and the list of ingredients. And usually all 15 nutrients are shown: calories from fat, saturated fat, trans fat, cholesterol, sodium, carbs, dietary fiber, sugars, protein, vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, and iron. So those are all of the nutrients that are shown on the nutrition label. And I just want to mention that raw fruits and vegetables and fish are exempt from nutrition fact labeling, and foods that contain insignificant amounts, and we'll kind of go over that a little bit more, insignificant amounts of specific nutrients are also exempt from that. So that includes like tea, coffee, and other things like food coloring. Okay. All right, I had somebody that mentioned that he can't hear the audio. Can anybody else hear me? All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, I have one person that can hear me, one person that can. Maybe to the person who can't hear me, maybe try calling from your phone versus dialing into the computer. That might be an option. That may be a fix. Sorry that I can't got this far in. Yep, the two people that mentioned they could get through the audio or calling into the phone, so maybe try calling in through the phone. Okay, all right, and just to mention, I am recording this, so if there's anything you don't hear, I will record it and send it to you guys. Okay, we'll move on, and thanks for letting me know. That's just in case everybody wasn't hearing me, that's never good, so. Fun, okay. Okay, just keep me posted. All right, cool, so let's move on. All right, so I'll break down the pieces of the nutrition label a little bit more so you understand what it's basically saying. So the first section under the heading Nutrition Facts is the serving size information. So look here for both the serving size, which is basically the amount people typically eat at one time, and then the number of servings in the package. And I want to note that because comparing your portion size, the amount you actually eat to the serving size listed on the panel is important. So if the serving size is one, okay, everybody can hear me. Okay, so if the serving size is 1 cup and you eat 2 cups, you're getting twice the calories, fat, and other nutrients listed on the label. So note that, I think that's important to pay attention to, especially with some, products that may be seeming that they're one serving, like I'm just thinking of like a beverage. Sometimes they are, 2 servings or 1.5 servings. So do note that. And the information on all nutrition labels is based on a 2,000 calorie a day diet. So if you are consuming, less or more, just note that, that get your calculators out, because you have to kind of do a little calculating or doing a little calculating in your head how much your serving size would be. They're not a one size fits all, but they're one size fits most. All right, the next section is the amounts per serving. So check out the total calories. It's bolded on the left side under amount per serving. Find out how many calories are in a single serving, and then here's where you can, cut back if you're watching your weight or wanting to lose weight. And then the percentage of daily value is noted here as well. So the percentage of daily value helps to evaluate how a particular food fits into your daily meal plan based on that 2,000 calorie a day diet. So a food item with a 5% DV of fat provides 5% of the total fat that a person is consuming for 2,000 calories a day should eat. So hopefully that makes sense. Once again, that gets pretty specific. So if you're focusing on something, and these figures get overwhelming, just kind of take a step back and really focus on what you want. So if it's calories, just generally focus on calories. If it's kind of noting how many calories from fat versus calories, that's something to kind of watch for as well. The next section on a label is the nutrient section, specifically the cholesterol, sodium, and total carbs and fat. So the AHA, the American Heart Association, recommends limiting these nutrients based on a 2,000 calorie diet, no more than 11 to 13 grams of saturated fat, as little trans fat as possible, and no more than 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day. And once again, that's the American Heart Association recommendations. Eating less saturated fat, added sugars, and sodium may help reduce your risk of chronic disease. Saturated fat and trans fats are linked to an increased risk of heart disease. Eating too much sugar makes it difficult to meet your nutrient needs and your calorie requirements. So these are all really good things to kind of focus on as you're making improvements with your diet. And then total carbs, we talked a little bit last week about kind of limiting your carbs, especially if you want to lose weight. So this figure right here is important to note that when you are carb counting. All right, moving on. More nutrients. So getting enough minerals, vitamins, minerals, and fiber is really important. These are beneficial nutrients: dietary fiber, protein, vitamins, calcium, iron. These are things that you need in your diet every day. So if you can eat more fiber, potassium, vitamin D, calcium, and iron for good bone health and reduce risk of diseases such as osteoporosis and anemia from low iron. Choose lots of fruits and vegetables to get these nutrients. And remember to aim for a high percentage of daily vitamins for these nutrients. So pay attention to that percentage to increase these beneficial nutrients in your diet. Additional nutrients, protein. We talked a little bit last week about some really good sources of protein, such as lean meat, poultry, fish, eggs, beans, and then carbs. There are 3 types of carbs. There are sugars, starches, and fiber. So eating whole grain bread, cereals, rice, and pasta, plus fruits and vegetables are a good way to get your carbs in. And then sugars, simple carbs or sugars occur naturally in foods such as fruit juice, that's fructose, or milk, such as lactose, or can come from refined sources such as table sugar, which is called sucrose, or corn syrup. So added sugars actually are going to be added onto nutrition fact labels in 2018. So you'll be able to have an additional line of added sugars. So that's important to note, especially if you are watching your sugars for prediabetes or diabetes. So that is a change that the nutrition labels are going to add in 2018. And then the percentage of daily values, we talked a little bit about that. Once again, that's just basically kind of a focus of how much you should have on a 2,000 calorie diet of each nutrient. Once again, adjusting if you have a lower or higher calorie count than that general 2,000 calorie. If a food contains anywhere from 10 to 19% of the daily value, it's considered a good source of that nutrient. All right, and then the ingredient list. Don't forget about this. This is an important area to look as well. Obviously, breaking out the food into the nutrients is important, but kind of focusing on the ingredient list as well. Foods with more than one ingredient must have an ingredient list on the label. And it's important to note that ingredients are listed in descending order by weight. So the largest amounts are listed first. All right, so I just have a few tips I wanted to go over that may help you with nutrition labeling, label reading. And I had mentioned this early on in the call. I know a few of you joined in after, but one thing I just want to mention is I understand that nutrition labels are and can be pretty confusing. So what I would just suggest is to just start looking at them, and you'll kind of come to become more familiar with them. And it's kind of like practicing reading them, and you'll kind of, be more in tune with what you're specifically looking for your nutrition, but also just kind of what to watch for, and paying attention to what's on the front of the box, such as sugar-free or 100% whole grain, and actually seeing if that kind of holds true in capacity on the back of the box on the nutrition label. And also, labels such as organic, that's awesome, great, but, if they're cookies, organic cookies isn't necessarily a healthy thing either. Okay, so I wanted to go over a few tips and tricks to kind of get you starting to read nutrition labels. The first thing is fat. So most of the fat content comes from healthy unsaturated fats, and we talked a little bit more about the sources of that in previous sessions. So you want to kind of steer clear of if the fat is from mainly saturated or if the product has any trans fat. I would just say put it back on the shelf if it has any trans fat. It really has been shown to increase your bad cholesterol, which is the LDL, and decrease your good cholesterol, which is both the opposite way of what you want to do. So steer clear of trans fat, saturated fats, and focus on the unsaturated fats, those healthy fats. For fiber, look for at least 3 grams of fiber per serving for products that are grains, breads, crackers, pasta, and even some soups. Sugars. Now, once again, this number doesn't distinguish between naturally occurring sugars like a lactose in milk or fructose in fruit, and added sugar like high fructose corn syrup or brown rice syrup. So what I would suggest is look at the ingredients for sources of added sugar. So steer clear with sugar words such as palm sugar, sweetener, syrup, other words, just pretty much any word that ends in OSE, O-S-E, is sugar. So if you're focusing on that, kind of just look at the ingredient list. That would probably be the best way to see what sugars are in there. Whole grains. To identify heart-healthy, fiber-rich whole grains, look for word whole before any grain, such as whole wheat. Also note that popcorn, oatmeal, and quinoa are considered whole grains. And when you're shopping for those breads, those crackers, look for whole grain, 100% whole wheat. It's not enough if it says multigrain or made with whole grain. You want to look for 100% whole grain, like this right here on the screen. Okay. Sugar-free. Sugar-free doesn't mean a product has fewer calories than the regular version. It may even have more. So just consider that. Sugar-free products may have less than 0.5 grams of sugar per serving, but they would be considered sugar-free. So that's kind of a little discrepancy, a little loophole that can be labeled on products. So once again, look at your ingredient list. And then organic. One of the other terms is, as I mentioned, organic, great. It's a great thing that more foods are becoming, organic, and that's another regulated industry by the USDA. But just note that just because it says organic doesn't necessarily mean that it's healthy for you. So kind of know what you're eating and look at ingredients and that type of thing. Kind of take note of other phrases and words that can occur too, like, all natural. Those type of words aren't necessarily regulated. So kind of know what you're looking for. And once again, if it jives with your health goals. Okay, I felt like I did a lot of talking and distributing of information, which I guess that's kind of the intent of nutrition label reading. It's just kind of learning. So do you guys have any questions about any of that? I'll kind of leave it open-ended. Otherwise, I'll kind of hang out for a couple minutes. Feel free to shoot me an email. But I do want to mention for our next session next week, I actually won't be able to participate on the live session. So what I'm going to do between now and then is record the session like I would normally do and just send it your way. So that will be our last session. It'll be on kind of, tips and tricks to stack your pantry, go grocery shopping, and then we'll talk a little bit about some basic cooking tips. And then that will be our last session. So if you want to just watch for that email, and then I'll give you credit when you are done watching it. We'll plan on that. So otherwise, that's the end of the session for this week. And like I said, I'll just kind of hang out if you guys have any questions or need any clarification on what I went over today. But other than that, have a great evening, guys.